Hello, everyone. Hey, Rishi.
Hey Ben.
How you doing? I gotta say, I'm starting this live stream very, very distracted because you told me right now that you had a whiskey in your hand, and I asked which whiskey, and you said Cotswolds, and I'm like, I like whiskey. I've never heard of that. So
Cotswolds
let,
is an area, right, in the UK, right? You're from the UK, right? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So,
I know the Cotswolds, but I
oh
don't
yeah,
know the
yeah,
Cotswolds of whiskey. I'm very curious. So let's do this. Let's do our intros, our hello. You can, if it's okay with you, you can tell people who you are, do like an introduction of yourself, and then from that, I'm going to ask more questions about that whiskey because I'm so curious.
sounds good. All right, cheers, Ben. So yeah, I'm Rishi. I work at Avanade. So you've had James Dales on before, and I think and Prafi as well. I think,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and there's a few other people. There's a few other people from Avanade, and we've got
yeah.
quite a few MVPs there. So it's actually a joint venture between Accenture and Microsoft.
Mm.
Um, so it's owned by both companies, but essentially the Microsoft arm of Accenture. I came over from a company called Altius. We were acquired in about 2020.
Okay.
And my background, yeah, I started off. So I went to LSE, London School of Economics. I worked at Deloitte for a few years, trained as a chartered accountant. I moved into HSBC and Barclays and did a bit of stuff with tech and product control and accounting, and then um,
Damn.
got into Power Query with Excel and VBA and doing that, and then that's it. Came into the Power BI world in 2017, I think, with James Dales, and I think I was the second person in the team doing Power BI, obviously apart from James.
Wow, that's
So yeah,
amazing. That's amazing. I love so I've said a couple of times before that I find it really interesting the paths that people take to get to where they are in their career, especially with data,
yeah,
Power BI, all that kind of stuff. But yours is really interesting actually because what I like, I mean, and another interesting, you have people who are like engineers. I think also like Kurt Bueller was like a I don't know, like a
yeah.
biologist or something, whatever. Um,
I mean, I
but
love his blog, right? The style of that, the graphics and and
it's
just the way he
amazing.
explains stuff as well, and the fact that he covers all this non-technical stuff is brilliant. Really,
Yeah,
really.
it's fantastic. What I find interesting about yours is that you were in a very like finance industry. Obviously, what you came up through, but and then you open Power Query and Power BI, and you're like, no, this is where I need to be. So so instead of it's an interesting shift there, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, data's to be fair, accountancy or finance is a really mind-numbing job. Right? So things like VBA and
Mm,
doing where you can automate tasks and you're not doing the same thing day in day out. And when your data complexity increases, which it invariably does as the company grows and you get
mm,
external acquisitions and all of this kind of stuff. So there's real value I think for it, and I think
mm,
it's a very underserved market. So actually, one of the things I'm really looking at, both in the community and at Avanade, actually, is finance. So
mm.
I'm looking at the modern finance agenda in Avanade and seeing how we can bring finance people into the 21st century, into fabric and things like that, but also then running courses and
Yeah,
doing things like that for the finance community as well.
that's really interesting. Very, very cool. I like it. We'll come back to this in a second, but Donald just said you had me at whiskey. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair. That happens quite often. Um, yes. So no. You had this like career in so like finance and do you say you're working for Deloitte? Yeah,
Hmm. So
yeah.
I did a few stints at the Big Four, and then some of the banks in central London and Canary Wharf, all kind of in
Wow,
that area.
that's cool. I've been outside the Canary Wharf, never been inside, so that's quite cool to be inside it. What's life like at one of the big four, mate? How did you find it? If you're allowed to say, if you dare.
No, I mean, look, it's good, right? You're very specialized in what you do,
Mm,
right?
okay.
Even though it's a company, it does so many things, right?
Okay.
And
Mm,
I guess that's true of every big company, even Avanade and Accenture. Obviously, we do lots, and you're very specialist in that role as
mm,
well. But, it's weird because you'll do like accountancy and it'll cover everything from audit and tax and bookkeeping and all of these things, and then you work in a role in like the Big Four, and you're in like corporate real estate or like tax technology, like
really?
very, very specific areas. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then
Oh
so you
wow.
don't really actually get the full breadth of kind of exposure.
Yeah,
If you
of
work for a
course, it's too
small
big.
yeah, if you worked for a small firm or you were, a small firm of accountants and you were actually doing, bookkeeping for clients and
Mm,
returns, stuff like that, it would be a very different scenario. You'd get more of that exposure. So it's very good for to get that specialism. And obviously you've got the culture, you've got everything else around you with all of that. And I think as a grad, it's great. But yeah, I think it's just I think Altius was the first small company that I kind of it was all these mega companies before.
That's funny. That must be quite like the culture difference must be pretty substantial. Did did it take a while to get used to it, or?
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. It's good, right? Where kind of everyone in the everyone in the company basically, right? And you know who to go to for certain things and all the rest of it. Whereas with Avanade and any big company, you spend a lot of time trying to figure out who the right people are to speak to and where to find stuff. Like, I'm sure we've done this before. So there is always, we've done it before because you're like a 100,000 person company. You must have done this kind of project before or something like that. That's where Copilot's going to come in, right? We just say, type into Copilot, can you find me? I'm doing an RFP on this. Can you find me all the documents where we've done this before?
Class.
Maybe it'll just tell you where they are and who to speak to. Maybe
that actually might be probably one of the best uses of Copilot I've actually heard, just to locate who does what and who can help you with what. I like it. It's quite cool. Here we go, Fernando. The main difference between not working inside the Big Four, not having to wear a suit and tie. Yeah. Fair enough.
I don't know if that's still the case. I mean, maybe. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, post COVID, I don't think I have. I've definitely not worn a suit and tie. I might have worn a suit once.
I think post COVID, I went to put on a suit once, and I was very, very upset because either the suit had shrunk or my waist size had increased. Probably the latter, to be fair. So I was in a massive huff with suits, and I will never wear one again for shaming my waistline. Anyway, are you still there? Can you hear me, Rishi? Okay. Yeah, it's all good. Just froze for a second. So the whiskey. I'm gonna loop back around to the whiskey. Let's just take a beat because I'm curious. So I like whiskey. I tend to drink like Scottish, like Isle whiskey, like nice, like peaty flavors and stuff. You said Cotswolds signature whiskey. I did not know there was whiskey made in the Cotswolds, so now I really want to try that.
Yeah. I think it's in Sainsbury's. It's on like 20-25 quid at the moment. So yeah,
okay.
Definitely worth checking out. I'd come and give you a bottle, but you're in Germany, right? So
my dad's coming to visit in like a month.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So
and
he could bring me like a very, very like a 2-month early birthday present. So I think that's a reasonable request, no?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So it says £45 on the website. So I think I'm sure you can stretch his budget at that, and then we can I'll let you know how I feel about that one. So good.
Sounds good.
Nice. So thank you for that. We've got a question, so I'm going to pull it up. Which actually, before we get the question, Donald says he wants to have a tailored suit. You know what? That would be a really cool thing to have, no?
It is. I mean, I think you need to get the right quality. I remember years ago, I went to Vietnam, and I got a tailored suit there. And obviously, you don't know much about the kind of tailors or anything there, right? I mean, one of my friends went to a really expensive place that I was with, and I went to a cheaper place. I'm like, I'm sure they're all the same, right? I mean, they all seem reputable outfits. But I remember I came into work wearing this new suit that I got tailored in Vietnam, and then I sat down and it just ripped. Like,
no.
Maybe I should have gone for the.
See, buy cheap, buy twice, right? I'm the sort of person I would buy a tailored suit and I'd be, oh my god, this is so awesome, and now I would wear it like once in 5 years, and then I would go to put it on again, and then it wouldn't fit because I put on weight. So I think, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, this is just me rambling on about things that I say. So could you walk us on the news about Learn Data Insights? Can you do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic.
So Learn Data Insights. So basically, it started off, it is very much a community thing. So it started off just as a community thing. I did some quizzes as a way to kind of prepare myself for DA 100 when it first came out. And this is back in 2018 or something like that, or 2017 even. And also, it was my way to prepare, and then also put something out in the community that's a bit different to the standard blogs and videos and things like that. So I wanted to do something a bit different, and I quite like the whole quizzing thing. And actually, the MBA that I did recently was actually all done using quiz questions. Like the entire MBA syllabus was basically taught through a mobile app with quiz questions. And the fact that you can teach an MBA syllabus like that is incredible, but it's a really, really good way of learning. And so I started writing a few more kind of quizzes and building the platform behind it. So behind LDI, behind the quizzes,
Mm-hmm.
it is a whole set of an Azure platform
Mm-hmm.
that the data gets landed. And actually, if anyone's interested in the back end behind it, have
Mm-hmm.
a look at the session I did with a guy called Harry Alt at Avanade as well, who's in Manchester Power BI user group. So
Okay.
it's up there. I think it was a couple of weeks ago. We walked through the back end of LDI now in Fabric and what it
Mm-hmm.
looks like, and Gen AI and all of that. So it was really my way of learning this stuff. And then as it's grown, I've kind of been really thinking about, well, actually, how do we really get the right education for data analytics skills and other skills potentially as well. I think companies' approach to training, I think they've got it wrong for the most part.
Okay.
I think
Interesting.
it's the kind of approach I said, well, let's give them a Pluralsight Udemy subscription and let them go and
Mm,
stuff, or there's loads of stuff for free on the internet, go and learn it.
mm.
It moves at such a pace, people don't have the time. And you go off and do a course on AdventureWorks, come back for a couple of days and you expect it to be able to build these Power BI reports and you can't, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you get stuck. You're working with SAP data or whatever else it is, right?
Mm.
And so yeah, I think what I'm trying to do more broadly then is really think about how could we do things like cohort-based courses? How could we do things like training people on their own data and processes and build really interactive e-learning? So that's all the stuff I'm trying to work on at the moment and do some stuff with financial reporting in Power BI. So I ran a course at SQL Bits,
Okay.
face-to-face SQL Bits for training day session pre-con.
Mm.
That was really well received, and now I'm putting that content into e-learning. So,
Wow.
so yeah, watch this space soon. Hopefully, powerplatformfinance.com. I think that's the brand I'm going to do all of that through. So, yeah, there's a lot there. There's a lot there. I've been speaking to a few edtech companies and stuff as well, and there's a lot of interest in this space, and I think a lot of demand for it. So let's see where it goes.
Cool. What's the I'll try and paste that in the I'll try and post that. Sorry, in the chat. What is it again?
I can put it in our chat if you want.
Yeah. Go for it. That'd be awesome. Cheers, mate. Sounds really helpful. Learning. Yeah, it's like Linda is. So I'll put that in and then take a look at that link, everyone. I'm sure it's totally awesome. I'll have a look at myself. Nice. I'm one of the things I'm working on at the moment is building up like learning resources at the company that I'm working for, like training programs and stuff. And it's a really, really difficult thing to get right, and also
Yeah,
what you said about people taking the time to do it as well. It's such a hard thing because of course, not everyone who, people who can consume reports or need to, understand how to create a report. But those who, it's becoming, I think, an increasingly common thing, an increasingly common expectation that a person can kind of build a Power BI report, and understand that sort of thing. But it's from the outside looking in, of course, it looks so much more simple than it actually is. And when you get into it, that initial enthusiasm, depending on who you are, can quite quickly wane, because it's not about just kind of, there's this thing, was it clicky, clicky, draggy, droppy, whatever, which I don't really think really represents very well what Power BI. It's funny to say, but there's very little about the reality behind that, So to understanding what people need to know. Oops, my lights just went off because I had a. Sorry, I've got a
yeah,
button. I've got a button on my feet. I can switch the lights on and off, but I put my feet in the wrong place, so the lights went off. But it's really difficult to balance right and understand what people need to know to kind
yeah.
of actually take those initial steps. So it's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's getting people on that journey, and I think it's become worse, to be honest, not better, right? With things like Fabric and things like that,
Ah, mate.
overwhelm, right? It's just if you actually speak to people outside the data and tech community, they're just like, "What the hell is this? What have Microsoft done now?" They've just brought all of this stuff into the Power BI environment.
Yeah, yeah.
Rebranded it all, like
It's
is
I,
it is it a big marketing ploy or b something that I'm just it's just
I think it's an interesting thing because obviously for people who need it, it's awesome, right? But I kind of think the position of it is, and obviously this is just like little like random me in my opinion that doesn't matter, you know what I mean? But um, the way they positioned it before they released it, I think kind of made it was incorrect, you know.
Okay.
like the way that Power BI is now part of Fabric, and they have been very vocal in saying, "Look, you might not need to know that this is fine," but I think it's kind of diluted the learning resources somehow also from Power BI. If you look at the number of things that were Power BI and now are like Fabric, you know,
Mm,
it's I know Power BI is part of Fabric, but it's also very, very separate as well. Power BI in itself is a big thing, but now to start to understand where Power BI finishes. Yeah, exactly, Anthony. Yeah, Power BI. Yeah, you know what it is. I like when people do this because I'm so bad at being concise. Um, there it is. Power BI has got lost in the Fabric world. Yeah, basically that. I can't say it better than that, to be honest. I think it's a little bit diluted down, and it's harder sometimes to find what you want, or if you're a new person, maybe it's harder to understand precisely what's going on. And I don't know. It's
yeah.
great. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, from a layman perspective, lot of the features aren't new, right? A lot of the stuff you could do before in Azure, and you can do in Power BI using a UI, and
Mm,
that's all there. There's no real incentive or understanding as to why would I move to it. And actually, I don't. I think actually trying to say I'm going to move everything to Fabric is probably the wrong approach anyway.
mm,
I think actually most of your data products
mm,
would probably begin life in Azure still. And maybe at least for the foreseeable future, I think it makes sense. I think it
mm,
has a lot of, you have a lot more control of that. You have a lot of things with the cloud scale analytics architecture in Azure that you don't have in Power BI.
mm,
And you can just shortcut it into Fabric, into
mm.
OneLake for use cases, whether that's just to put Power BI on top of a direct lake or
Yeah.
to write data science. Like I think it's just part of a general ecosystem that doesn't mean you have to take it all on. I think you just work out what works for you and
Yeah.
use what you need.
But that's this. I completely agree. But saying it is such a simple thing. This is work out what works for you. That's like the hard part, is actually of all that product, to say actually what do we need from all of these
Yes.
things. You know,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. That is 100% what you should do. But it just becomes a little bit harder. Actually, what I find interesting as well, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that, or maybe last week actually, that when people talk about Power BI, quite often what they're talking about is Power BI desktop, right?
Mm.
Because if you say to someone like, what is Power BI, quite often they'll just describe the things that are actually in Power BI desktop. Yeah. And then now to kind of like, and this is actually also maybe a good question to you as well, like if you're talking about your Power BI training and stuff and the things that you focus on, when you're giving like an intro, like a newcomer Power BI training, if you do that sort of thing, would you actually focus on anything other than Power BI desktop, or is that a good starting
No,
point?
yeah, no, absolutely. I think you do focus in Power BI desktop. I think you know where it should really go is it should be a bit limited. I think you should have a bit of a beginner mode, if you like, in Power BI desktop, right? Or a kind of self-service mode even, right? So you can connect to an Excel file and it should say, well, where's your Excel file stored? Is it
Hmm.
is it on OneDrive, or do you want to upload it to OneDrive, and we'll do that if you point to the file rather than
Hmm.
trying to point it to your machine. And just set up some of that best practice for you, so it makes it easier to
Hmm.
refresh and obtain, and you don't build technical debt. Like I think something like that should just be a much easier thing to get people started on the journey,
Yeah.
because everyone just builds stuff off Excel spreadsheets and then they just end up getting themselves into a mess. So I
Yeah.
think helping people on that initial barrier, and
Yeah.
maybe you don't need all of the stuff. And to be honest, I'm not a big fan of the on object formatting stuff. It's
Yeah.
just maybe I'm just not used to it, right? And old dog new tricks type thing. But
Yeah.
probably an element of that. But yeah, I find it quite hard to use. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe that will make it easier for people who are new to it. I don't know.
Yeah, this is a couple. I mean, so like my thing on I can't even say it, on object formatting, is that, so I haven't actually used it since the previous update, but no, I don't use it, and I think I can't really see. This is, maybe I'm very wrong here. I can't really see how on object formatting would make anything particularly easy for people who are newer to the tool, because it's not like it's totally intuitive, is it? It's
I
not.
think it's just closer to Excel, isn't it? I think that's probably it. I don't
Maybe.
know.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to bring it more into like look and feel like Excel does, and so that's what people are used to.
They are trying. I just don't think they've succeeded. I'm sorry, that sounds really mean, but I think it's just quite a way away. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
It's
sorry. It's
yeah.
bad.
It's getting some real rap here, isn't it? Yeah.
But this is the thing. I've never really. If you're in the chat, right, or even if you know someone who likes on object formatting, please write tell us now.
Let's put them down in the community. Let's find the one person who likes
Yeah, because seriously, I don't know anyone who likes it. I had it on for like a month and a half because I did as you said. I was like, look, it's going to be the standard at some point, like when they introduced the new format pane, like whatever, a year and a half ago, whatever it was, and it was for me not great, but I was like, you know what, just switch it on because it's going to be standard. But no, it's just I don't think it's in any way helpful. Look, so Donald is, I think, saying the formatting part is okay, but the modeling part is not. Okay, well, let's take that as half a positive comment. I'm starting to feel bad. I feel like we're kind of like,
it.
bully. Yeah, yeah, I
No, no,
agree.
no. I think there's a lot of things they've done with Power BI Desktop, and I think they do a lot of research, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they do understand their user base. They do try and make it available to such a broad audience. So
Mm.
I think it does work, right? And this is a challenge with anything, right? Like with Excel and stuff, even it has millions and millions of users, right? If
Mm.
not a billion users, and it's a very difficult thing to try and
Mm.
be all things to all people.
Yeah.
So, so yeah, I mean, maybe Power BI will kind of should have be catered to different audiences given how broad it is. But
I think it's admirable what they've tried to do in like unify the experience of all of these products, right?
hmm,
I get that. However, what I think is more important than that is actually just thinking what experience is actually user friendly. Not let's make it this way because that's what people are used to in Excel. I'll be really honest. Like I know I'm not the target audience here because I'm not, right. But I actually found the experience of working in Power BI without on object format better than working in Excel. I'm not saying it is better. I'm saying I found it better because that's more what I'm used to.
yeah,
You know.
exactly. Yeah,
So it's just, if it works because it works and it's well designed. It doesn't work because it's like some other program that you also have. It's like, for me, that's a kind of like akin to saying we're going to do it this way because we've always done it that way, which is the worst reasoning for anything ever.
yeah. But I think that Excel to Power BI ramp is the biggest one, and it's
Mm.
and
Yeah,
it's
yeah, for sure.
most important to get right. And I'm not sure Microsoft have, but I mean, part of that might be part of that might be things like live connected tables, right? I
Mm,
mean, I don't think anyone even uses them, right? But it's
mm,
really a great feature because you can suddenly do your export to Excel, but have it exactly as it is, but not locked down and
mm.
live connected. So actually refreshes like that kind of feature
Yeah,
between them is really going to
that's true.
bring some of that together.
That's a fair point. Fair point. I what I noticed today, which when you because I'm doing documentation and I'm taking screenshots and I'm looking at things that I don't usually look at, right? And one of the things that I noticed today, which I found was really unusual, when you open a brand new PBIX, right, that has and you've got no data in the file at all,
Yeah,
on the background or on the canvas, it'll say, bring in data to your report, and you can click on different buttons
yeah,
to do
yeah,
it. I've
yeah.
literally never used it because I always just use the get data button. Never used it. I think there are like four options. And I think the third one prompts you to copy and paste data. And I'm like, I looked at it and I was just kind of like, are you kidding me or what? You've got this like really powerful like tool, like ETL, all this, like you can bring it data, you can do this really dynamic stuff, you can connect all this. And your third prompt, massive prompt on the screen is copy and paste data into Power BI. I'm like, I can't be having that. That's a weird. That smacks as something that they did when they first created it and they just forgot about because it can't.
Well,
It's
that's what I said about Excel, right? I mean, it should just point you to, you should be able to just connect to an Excel file that's stored on Teams or SharePoint easily without having to figure out I need to
mm,
go to SharePoint folder connector or share, and figure out how to connect to an Excel file that's stored on OneDrive or Teams. Like
Yeah.
it should be an easy thing to do.
I'm not sure. Do you still with the Excel online? Do you still have to get the link and then remove the question mark web equals one or whatever? Whatever. Do you still have to do that?
That is a way to do it. The way that I always just recommend people to do it, and I
Yeah.
do this through anything, because to say, right, you've got an Excel file, go into Teams, go into any Teams channel, go into the Files tab, click on upload your files there, then just do View in SharePoint, open the SharePoint, just copy that, go to Power BI
Okay.
Desktop, SharePoint folder, put that in, all your files are there. Reference that query, filter
Okay.
it down to the files you want, and then you've got your files. And anyone can
But-
open that PBIX file, and if they've got access to SharePoint, they can refresh it. It will refresh on the service. Like, that's the way to do it. But
Yeah.
that's not obvious that that's how you need to do it. And
Yeah, that's true.
I think you
That's
can
true.
connect to an Excel file with a web link, but I can't remember exactly how to do that anymore.
This. I think I still do that out of habit. I'm not sure if it's this. No, it still works perfectly well. It's just the fact that you have it stored in your OneDrive. You open it in the app. You get the info, and the info has the link, and that's what I use. Maybe there's a better way now. It's one of the things that I just do because I've always, like, as I just said, I've always done it that way. So I still do it, right?
Nice, interesting. You said you're doing documentation? Have you tried Chat GPT for it to produce using Power BI documentation?
So yes, depending on the subject, what I'll tend to do is I'll kind of use ChatGPT and then just to like prompt myself, to say, like, to ask it a question, and then so there's nothing that I miss. I want to word it in my own way, using my own style, but I'll like say to ChatGPT, like, ask a question about, Power Query, like how to transform data, or the top 5 or the most convenient data transformations in Power Query or something, and just to see if there's anything important that I've missed out. Um, my prob I haven't. I use ChatGPT. I pay for ChatGPT, but I'm no expert at prompt engineering or whatever they call it. So I think normally, unless I really sit down and take, I don't know, like a week or whatever, how long it takes to kind of learn how to really prompt to get a nice, concise answer. I think until I do that, I'm going to spend too much time actually editing the answer itself, and by that time, I could have just been happy with my own thing.
Yeah.
It tends.
I think documentation, though, is a really useful process to go through as a developer, because I think it forces you to think about what you're building, which is very easy to not do as you're building things very quickly. And also, it helps to get your stakeholders on the same page.
Yeah.
Right. So once you put something together, so I'm always a big fan of kind of document templates and documenting requirements, designing your star schemas before you build them. And then post documentation, yes, to a degree. Maybe using Tableau Editor to extract out descriptions, but actually doing all that up front actually helps you save time during the build, and then it serves as your documentation afterwards. So yeah, definitely a good idea. And I mean, I'm curious as to how ChatGPT will help with stuff like that. But
one of the was it Win who made that really cool video about using the ChatGPT prompt to comment out your M code? That was really cool. Basically, you take he actually has the prompt on his website, and you basically write in ChatGPT, and then you paste the answer back into and it comments it out, and it's really that was for me, that was awesome, really helpful to have a nice, because it's one of those things that one of the things that I'm really focused on when I give a instructor-led training is to say, like, this, I'm going to be very honest, is what I'm telling you should do, but I always forget to do it myself. And one of them is to really ensure that my applied steps in Power Query are really nicely formatted, and at every single point saying exactly what I'm doing to make it nice for the next user. I should do that. I always forget, but because you can do it now quite easily with ChatGPT, that's huge. And it's a classic example of, like, no, it's not going to take your job, but it's going to make you better at your job,
Yeah, and hopefully we'll see more of it be automated. How much have you used the natural language generation for DAX? Because I guess that's the Copilot-esque type stuff as well. And
not at all, to be honest.
That should come with pre-documented code, right? If it writes something for you based on natural language, you should explain what it's doing in
That's a
natural
fair
language.
point, actually. Yeah.
Documentation as comments, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I haven't
That's
really
true.
used it either. Again, one of those things, right? You get a lot of these features, and again, am I the target audience for it? Probably not. But yeah, it'd be good to hear people's experiences of these things, because that's the future, right? This is where everything's going.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that it seems for me a little bit like early doors, you know? Like, I'm sure it works well, but I think it'll become more and more prominent as it's developed out. Or I don't know, but maybe again, I'm not a good example because I've been using it for quite a long time. Maybe it's really great for newer users, because they don't like, it seems ridiculous to say, like, stuck in their ways. I've been doing it since like 2017. It's not that long, but
And
you've
that's certainly not getting the data well, then.
right, yeah, exactly. But it's long enough to kind of like get you stuck, and that's the thing. I mean, I have to check myself pretty often to ensure that I'm actually, doing things that are current. Or this is why, you read the blog posts, and you scan Twitter to see if there's anything like new and huge that you've missed. Or you mentioned before, Data Goblins is a great site for that sort of thing as well, because it has lots of good ideas, and it kind of alerts to kind of new stuff and new ways of doing things. So it's just one of those things, man. It's we try our best, right?
Yeah, I think there is a bit too much tech for tech's sake, though, right? Like, it's
Oh
too
yeah.
much about, focus on the tools and tech, and rather than the business processes and what you need and the people and the processes. Like, even for stuff like Fabric, it's less about the technical implementation, right? You don't need to pay expensive consultants to go and spin up these resources for you anymore, because it's just, you could do it with the click of a button, like a Power BI workspace or report. So what it then becomes about is, well, how do you fit this into your organization? How do you go? One of the best quotes from someone that I've heard was, it's kind of Fabric enabling and allowing your organization to become IT enabled rather than IT reliant.
Okay.
Right? So, in the previous world, if you're, in that business analyst and Power BI community, you'd have to go knocking on the door of IT and saying, right, can you set me up a data warehouse? And, I need my data to come into a data lake and all of this. And then now actually you can say, well, I could get access to data that's already there, and I can start to use that and shape it for my own use cases without having to necessarily just reinvent the wheel. Or
Yeah, but probably it'll still be pretty heavily admin restricted, right? It's not like admins are going to let you just go and do whatever you want. I mean, I'm guessing, right?
They do with Power BI, right? They do with Power BI. And I guess that's the point, right? I think there will have to be some stuff that's better controlled. And it then comes down to, well, what level, where do you apply those controls? Like, do you apply those controls in this self-service environment, or do you apply controls earlier up in Azure and things like that? And yeah, absolutely, it's all people, right? It's absolutely sane. And that's where I think the key to implementing any of this tech really comes down to is your people and processes and your operating model.
Yeah.
Right? You need to have in place.
But as the Power BI Fabric, let's say Fabric because that's what it is, as Fabric expands and becomes more prominent, is more widely used, that's where most of the power is going to be, So to say we have this and we don't have to request this back from IT anymore, that sounds cool in practice, but also it becomes very dangerous, because then it's not well administered, It's just it's sitting there, and at this point, it seems like a cool thing to say. Oh, that's really cool because we don't have to ask IT. Yeah, that's awesome, but it's kind of if that continues on for another 3 years, it's going to lead to a horrible mess. No.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is what I'm saying. It's been, and it's enabling people to do things, but obviously with that, comes a whole mess, right? So I mean, for the last few years, my real focus at work has all been about Power BI governance, right? So I've been going into large organizations
That's cool.
that have been using Power BI for years, and they've got thousands of reports and workspaces, and it's just a mess. They don't know what data is, where it's been, who it's been shared with, where it's, where they're bringing in data from where, and what reports have been built off it. And at the moment, I'm doing a project on a Tableau to Power BI migration, which again is even more crazy, because you've got this big estate in Tableau, like tens of thousands of reports that you're trying to then lift into a completely different environment. So I think it's basically what I kind of advise in that scenario is well, for start, not all BI is the same. You're going to have a lot of BI which is team and personal BI, right? And that's fine for people to manage that. Let people play around, give
Sure.
people that freedom, right? What you want to manage is the data behind it, and also where it is enterprise BI, that needs to be more closely managed, right? So where it's coming from trusted data sources, it needs to be certified. All of that you should manage through Azure Active Directory groups. You should have the controls around, and have tenant settings applied and stuff like that, all for your enterprise content. For the rest of it, yeah, as people are saying in the chat, let the chaos happen and let people do what they need to, because that's how you're going to get the adoption. And make sure you've got processes to move from team and personal BI into something that's more structured and governed.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that still needs to happen around that. And I think with Fabric, again, it's the same thing, right? People will create a mess in Fabric. I already have created a mess. In fact, I created a mess every single time I used it. Right? So
creating a mess is sometimes a great thing. Is how you learn. I mean, this is like me when I was learning Power BI. Of course, Fabric is a bigger tool, so the mess that you can create can have more impact. But the concept is, I mean, for me, depends on how you learn. I pretty much only learn by creating a mess. I have like I'm my brain is, I'm not sure how good is this a good thing to say, but my brain isn't that well structured as I'm going to do this and then do that. I was like, no, I need to do all of these things and then just like see what happens. So it's I had the benefit is when I was creating all my Power BI messes, I was creating it basically on my own workspace, my own tenant that I paid for myself, So I wasn't like, back then I was working for a German company called BASF, a pretty big company. But I didn't do any of that on their workspaces or on their tenant, because it was a very new tool back then for the company. Again, it was like 2017. So, but it was very new for that company because they were just rolling out really slowly. And I thought, you know what? If it's getting rolled out, like let's just keep it nice and smooth. Let's not make any messes because it might scare people,
Right, now
So,
it's a good opportunity to do it in Fabric, right? Because they've got free trials, and it's very easy to spin up your own tenant, right? And then you just enable Fabric on it for 60 days for free, and you've got access to everything, which you never had with like a premium capacity. Now you've got a premium capacity essentially free for like 60 days or 90 days. I can't remember what it is now even.
It's a while, right?
And I think up until the point when it gets to GA, they'll probably leave them. I don't know, but whilst it's in public preview, I think that's the plan, right? Microsoft want to try and get as wide adoption of this, and so you've got that capability to do it. Plus, you've got all of the learning resources and everything that Microsoft have put out, and all the MVPs have put out, and everything else. So it's a good opportunity. It's just finding the time.
Exactly that. I was just thinking to say, I at first I was kind of disappointed with myself that I really didn't put in the time and the effort that I wanted to when Fabric was first released. I did at first. I was really like sitting down and doing. I really went for it in the first like couple of weeks, but I changed job, of course, like as I mentioned, and I just haven't had time. So it's probably been, I'm not sure how long has Fabric been released now, but say
end of May, right? So 3 months, nearly coming up to 3 months.
Yeah. So probably haven't touched it for like, almost 2 of those 3 months. And
Really?
And my thing was that because when it was first released, of course it was preview, right? And because I am very, very much not a data engineer, right? I'm like some people say I'm like an analyst, but like I'm kind of like engineer. No, that's not me. I'm an analyst, right? So not only was Fabric itself a new product to me, but the things inside Fabric, some of that stuff I'd never actually done before. But also, Fabric was preview, therefore certain things weren't working very well. But I didn't know: is it me or is it Fabric?
Yeah.
And I decided, you know what? I'm not going to do it for now. I'm going to kind of put it to one side. I'll try and come back to it when all these things are ironed out, because I need to know. I can't learn well without knowing if the mistake is coming from me or it's just a bug or something's not working as it should. And like really my first 3 days I was trying to fix something that I couldn't make work, and it was just an error in Fabric. That's all it was. And that was just like my 3 days just like gone. And I was so pissed off. Not at Microsoft, not at Fabric, but just the general situation.
Yeah,
So
it's a hard thing, and that's what I'm saying. Even to try and learn it, it's overwhelming, right? Because there's just so much there, and it's. I think I did a session at SQL Bits as well on how to learn tech in a fast paced environment, and I think kind of what I was really highlighting there is you need to have use cases to learn on. You need to be able to apply it straight
yeah,
away.
yeah.
There's no point just trying to learn something for the sake of learning it because it's new and shiny. Like, well, I guess that's the point, right? And it's obviously right now it's quite difficult to have proper production use cases for Fabric, but maybe there's a case for saying, look, let's start to rebuild some of what we're doing, directly, do some of that ETL work maybe in Fabric and see how it works, and then you've got maybe 2 versions of your Power BI report running in parallel, and then as it gets more mature, you can start to switch stuff over. And I guess you just have to try and carve out a bit of time each day to do that and come back to it continuously, rather than saying, right, I'm going to learn it in this few days and then I'm never going to touch it for the next 3 years. You forget it straight away.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think those kind of things are really important to be able to then do it and then try and learn it all, right? Focus only on the specific things that you need to learn for what you're doing right now.
Just kind of like trying to shift more like back to like specific Power BI stuff. I'm curious, like you obviously, you've had a lot of experience working with different companies. You worked as a consultant, so you've a lot of experience with other people and what they struggle with. With Power BI specifically, what have you seen is the point that your customers or companies really struggle with Power BI, other than like implementation, something that they need, and it's like the hardest need to the hardest requirement to fulfill?
I think it's speaking the same, people speaking the same language, right? And I think you see this with kind of finance and places like that, where they have particular processes, they have ways of doing things, they have the understanding of the business context, right? And then you've got people on the IT side who speak a different language, right? They're interested in tech, and the consultants who come in are probably more interested in the tech. So it's actually trying to bring those people together to understand how tech is going to be able to serve them, and not all tech will, and what is it that they need, but also what are those requirements? Like, why are you building a report? I think most reports probably shouldn't be reports.
Yeah, true.
If it's just a bit quick of analysis, it's probably easy to do in Excel, right? And that's fine, and you can have some throwaway stuff there. But I think it's more just thinking about what that is and understanding the requirements and designing stuff before you build it, which you used to do with IT solutions. But obviously now in the self-service world, because everything's so quick, you do away with all of that. But I think you lose a lot from doing that as well, because the quality suffers and actually you just end up with chaos.
Yeah, true. Thinking about like what you said about a lot of reports shouldn't be reports because it's just like ad hoc stuff. What I've found is, and this is something I was just thinking about the past few days, it would be it's probably a dangerous concept, but it could, if done right, I think it could be really cool that if you could auto delete data sets and reports that haven't been updated within the past X number of months. So if I have a report or a data set that hasn't been updated in the past, say, year, and I can specify that within the data set settings, because you can specify in the data set how often refresh, all that kind of stuff. But if it hasn't been refreshed, say, within 12 months, auto delete. That would be awesome. I would love that.
Well, Microsoft paused the refresh, right? If it hasn't been.
But delete. Just gone. Because I mean, it gets so messy. Like workspaces get so messy.
Kind of the BP example, right, where it was actually like, well, do we? Everyone's got a pro license. Most stuff is on shared. The only thing I need to worry about is what's on premium, because that's the stuff that's costing me essentially. Yeah. I've got an actual marginal cost against. Whereas the stuff on shared, it's not. It doesn't really. You don't necessarily need to worry about it from that level, right?
Because fair enough. So
you can spend a lot of time worrying about all of this stuff that's not being used. So as I'm saying, it is chaos, and I think that's why I'm saying not all BI is the same. Right?
Yeah, sure.
The stuff that you need to govern, that should be on your premium capacity. That's your differentiation.
Mm.
Right? In the Power BI world, is your stuff on your premium capacity is your enterprise BI, only your enterprise BI. That's the stuff you manage. The rest of it, just let people do what they want.
Yeah, fair enough. I think maybe I'm just too much of a control freak sometimes, and I see some stuff that
Yeah.
hasn't been refreshed since 2018, and I'm like, that has to go. 1 second. There's a tool. There's a tool that can do that called data logs. All right, I did not know that. See,
Yeah,
but this is the thing, and maybe this. I'm not sure if this is the point that you were making. I don't know, probably like 3 conversations ago. Conversation. Third party. There are so many third party tools that do different things, and it can get so expensive. And like, so great. There's a tool that does it, but really, that should be possible within Power BI. It should be possible to have that native in Power BI. I know it's probably a niche request, and thank you, Christopher, for saying that it exists. I'll definitely check that out. But if you look at how much you're spending on whatever, tabular editor, and then Power BI Sentinel, and then you got like, I don't know, you got data logs. These all do fantastic stuff, but you just made the cost of Power BI go up just like dramatically. That's bloody aggressive, Ben. It is. I admit that probably is quite an aggressive opinion, but I'm standing by it. Yeah.
There's more stuff on the admin and monitoring side, right? That's also evolved, albeit slower than it probably should have, right? Like the tenant, the admin monitoring and things like that are starting to come into place. Like it was supposed to be there a couple of years ago, and just kind of, didn't quite make it to what it needed to be. And I don't know if it still is. I haven't really seen it recently. Like, so you still kind of have to do your own custom solutions for it, really.
It's not great.
I think that's going to be harder with Fabric, right? I wonder what it actually picks up and what you can do with those APIs, there's scanner APIs and stuff. It'd be good to know if anyone's actually tried that as well, to see what you can really pick up. I know we've tried it a bit internally in Avanade. Sam, who's one of the guys in my team, did a session at London Power BI user group on it.
All right, so cool.
There is some stuff that you can a lot of stuff you can pick up and do and build your own really cool solutions around it. But perhaps you shouldn't have to.
Exactly, right. Someone mentioned at the very start of the live stream, ask you about your map skills or something. And someone's meant. I think is it James mentioned your mapping. What is it with you maps, mate? Come on.
Well, no, it's just I tried to use Icon Map a couple of times, and it just hasn't quite worked for whatever reason. The intention's there, but it's not an area of my brain I've managed to tap into to get working.
So you've probably basically been almost desk sharing with the guy who created Icon Map for the past couple of years, but it hasn't got through to your side yet. No,
not really. I'll get there one day, maybe one day.
But how often do you actually have to use maps? Really?
That's the thing. I don't really. I mean, to be honest, I don't really use Power BI very much at all these days. I spend most of my time in Word, Excel, and in PowerPoint. It's all
fair enough.
Actually, mostly Teams. To be honest, I'm just on Teams calls all day. But yeah, I mean, look, I don't necessarily use maps a huge amount. I mean, I think it is a good thing to try and do. I did I have used Icon Map successfully in a couple of times. I don't think I'll actually show James the good examples. So maybe
fair enough.
I've got one or two good examples. I did a credit analysis one, local authority credit analysis report for the London Excel meetup group last month.
All right.
Or month before, and that was using some map stuff, which is quite cool. But yeah, I mean, it's mainly community stuff. And to be fair, this is kind of why I do the community stuff, right? Because actually, you can be like, I want to build a.
I'll give you a second to come back. You're frozen.
Do this, right? So experiencing something, you can just build your own report for it.
I think I missed a little bit of that because I think you froze for a second and I missed part of that. Sorry.
I'm just saying, like, for me, that's why I build stuff for the community, right? Because actually you can your own customer for whatever you for the community, right? So if you want to learn Icon Map, you can just find the right use case, build a report with the user's Icon Map, and you've learned the skills on it.
Yeah.
Well, when you do it for customers, it has to be a very specific use case where they need it.
I think it's very rare. I mean, if I always enjoy doing what I do, whether it's building a report or doing admin stuff or doing documentation. I enjoy all of it, to be honest. I mean, there are some parts I enjoy more than others, to be honest. But when it comes to report building specifically, I never really enjoy it as much as I do when it's my own project. Because as you
Mm,
say, you can do what you want. You can try. You can use. I mean, I very rarely use maps because I think generally in the industry that I tend to work, there's not that much call for them. You know, if I were to work in, I don't know, maybe sporting industry or I don't know, freight, or maybe that it would become much more relevant. I don't know, but when you're working primarily with people data or finance data, I think it's rarely that useful, to be honest. Hey, Johnny, how you going?
really.
Johnny's there. There you go. So yeah, it's but it's I've used Icon Map a couple of times. Really good fun. It was harder than I thought it was going to be because I the first time I saw it, was of course it was at Power BI Next Step presented by James, who obviously is pretty good at it because you know he like built it. So when I first went in, I was like, it's going to be really cool. But again, standard thing, learning curve. But once you get there, it is a lot of good fun.
Mm. I mean,
To
you've done a lot of stuff with like Deneb and stuff like that,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
you
yeah,
again, it's not something area that I've ever really got into. But
yeah.
what's the learning curve like with that?
It's a good question. I found it actually pretty decent, to be honest. Pretty fast. I picked it up relatively quickly. I mean, obviously, I could see my own progress. One of the reasons I could see my own progress learning is because I made the videos, right? And every time I learned something, I just made a video. And of course, if I go back now, my very first is it was getting started or intro to Dena, whatever it was. The stuff that I built there was just absolute garbage. The code was fine, you know, but this is, and I always kind of give myself a disclaimer on all these Dena videos. And then this disclaimer is always, I'm not saying what I'm building is the correct thing to build. I'm not saying it's a visualization best practice. I'm just saying that this is how you write the code to do that thing. Right. So it kind of makes it easier for myself in that regard. But no, I found it really quite okay because um, I'm not sure if this is relevant, but because of the JSON syntax and because I've spent a lot of time basically just like working with APIs with the same syntax, I found it quite easy to like read and understand somehow. Um, so it was one of these things that just like clicked with me, you know.
Yeah,
There are
yeah.
many things that don't click, but I was happy that that thing did.
So is there still a need for things like Charticulator and things like
I
that?
don't think so. I haven't. I like the fact that there was both Charticulator and Deneb, but Charticulator isn't really developed anymore. It's there, but it's not really developed out. It was great to have both because you had the choice, right? Some people preferred Charticulator, some people preferred Deneb, and some people got in these conversations of Charticulator versus Deneb, which I always found a waste of time. Doesn't It's not versus. They both do great things. Use one. But I think if I'm wrong, people in the chat correct me. That's always a good thing to do. I think it's kind of very much more Deneb heavy these days because Charticulator isn't particularly supported, or it's not there. Johnny, have I done a 3D pie charts yet? You know what? I tried to do something 3D, but there was on Twitter ages ago. I forget who it was. I think it was I've forgotten his name. I apologize. Eugene Meidinger, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
He he um he posted something that he found on Reddit, which is like the world's most ugliest report or something. It was all like 3D bars, and I was like, you know what? I want to try and create one of those visualizations in Deneb, and I started to do it. It was taking me so long. I think I'd been on it for like 5 hours. I got to a point I was like, you know what? Close enough. I'm never going to use this. I'm just wasting my time. But Johnny, if I ever do a 3D pie chart, you'll be the first person I show it to because I know you'll appreciate it. Maybe actually, people who use Vega, because I only use Vega Lite. People who use Vega can probably do that because that's just another level. And that's the interesting thing.
What's the
Vega.
difference? What's the difference between Deneb and Vega?
So Deneb is like the visualization, and in Deneb I use Vega Lite, and some people use Vega. The best person to ask this question is I'm blanking on a name again. Give me 1 second. If I quickly go to Twitter, Andre, yeah, Andre, he primarily creates stuff, I believe, using Vega. So a good knowledge of Vega and Vega Lite. Basically, Vega Lite is, of course, a simplified version of Vega, so you can't do as much in it. One of the best example is, I would say, a scatter plot because of jittering. You can't really jitter very well with Vega Lite. That functionality just doesn't really exist there. You have to kind of do it in a really annoying way. But with Vega, it's inbuilt. It works really well. And
Jittery.
I hope I'm using the right word. Maybe I'm using the wrong word. Sorry.
Probably.
Like, do you know, to like, it's essentially like offsetting. No, I think this is correct.
Oh,
Like,
I see.
so like
Yeah.
if you have like
You've got
a
2 points overlapping, you want to be able to differentiate them.
right, exactly, and it's not really easy to do that in Vega Lite, but with Vega, yeah, exactly. It is. Thank you, Johnny. Again, it is Vega for dummies, and I am the dummy. That's all good. This is fine. This is what it's what Vega Lite is essentially. But honestly, I would suggest that for standard business style data visualizations, Vega Lite is more than enough. Absolutely. Vega, I would use Vega if I wanted to create something that's more like a, what do you call, like an amazing infographic or something, you know? Um, Andre creates beautiful stuff with Vega, and I used to use it in one of my presentations because you created one thing and it was just truly like a spectacular visualization, like an infographic. But yeah, I've
And
stopped doing.
which
This.
one is AI
Sorry.
coming to, and Copilot? Which one is Copilot going to be able to code in? That's the key question,
Ah,
isn't
yeah,
it?
that's true. Actually, interesting. I haven't tried it for a while, but a few months ago, I was kind of trying just to testing Chat GPT with Vega Lite,
Oh yeah.
and it wasn't good at it, to be honest. It was really interesting. It was,
Oh, it's not mainstream enough, is it? Probably to.
yeah, maybe the basis, it created code and it would never worked. It made me happy with myself because I could read through the code and find where the error was. So that was kind of like an ego boost to me, that I kind of could read it and quite quickly like debug it and work it out and stuff. So that's nice for my ego. But other than that, it's, yeah, we'll see. But go using these like stuff like Vega Lite and using Deneb, of course. What has really made me want in Power BI is like a visualization expert mode, where I can
Mm.
just do this everywhere where I want, because you understand the visual elements of you understand the elements of visualization in a much deeper depth, because when you have to create it like line by line yourself in the code, you kind of understand the relationships between these things. It's really cool. I find it very interesting. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, I mean, good. Have you got a course on it, or is it just a series of videos? Or
It's a series of videos, to be honest. There is Enterprise DNA have a good course, and also Jeff Weir posted something on Twitter and LinkedIn the other day, because I think some university created like quite a comprehensive step-by-step course and stuff of how to do it.
nice.
I can't find the link. Sorry about that. I'll
Yeah,
post it
no,
on
it's
Twitter, but
cool.
it's really
I'll have a
cool.
look at it. Yeah.
But this is actually, you mentioned before about your website with all your training stuff. I kind of at work, I stumbled across a tool that I actually really like for creating documentation, for creating like training program. It's actually what I'm using right now. It's
Okay.
called what's it called? Articulate. It's called Articulate.
That's what I use as well. Yeah, I
It's
use that.
really good.
Yeah.
I want my own license. It's not cheap, but it's
Yeah.
exceptionally good.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about if I can somehow, I don't know, squeeze the pennies and get I mean, it is an expensive license, to be fair, but if I could do that on my own website, I would use my own website so much more to actually create courses and stuff, and because
Yeah.
it's,
Well, hit me up. I've got a license. I've got content. So
there you go.
I've got time to build on the content. So yeah, absolutely. Any contributors, any people who want to build stuff, yeah, let me know.
Cool. Yeah, it's, I mean, it's
Build up
because
content.
it's actually, it's a very, it's, you can create really, I should get sponsored by Articulate for Xenon. It's a really user friendly tool, but you can create very nice, it's the level of interaction
Mhm.
that the trainings have, so it's quite cool. So if I could do it, I would use that to create like a Deneb training program, because I think it wouldn't be that difficult. one of the reasons, actually, to be fair, I haven't really tried that hard to do anything other than the videos is because the documentation that exists for Vega and Vega Lite actually on the GitHub website is, for me, I find it very, very good. Certainly, as someone who's just learning from zero, you're gonna have to go quite far before you feel restricted from the documentation. The
There's
only
there's also engagement, right? How many people read documentation?
Yeah, but the thing is, it's so interactive. Like it's the fact that
Right.
you can. It has like online editors. You're right. I mean, how often I'm never gonna say. In fact, ever. It's probably the only time I'm ever gonna say the documentation's amazing. But I find it quite fun to use because It's basically a website. It has loads of examples. You can click on the examples. You can then edit the code yourself, and it will live update the code that you're writing and stuff. It's just really nicely laid out. The only thing it's not very good at is when it comes to text, any type of text, because most of the examples that will give you, they don't have any like data labels, for example. There are no All the examples just don't have data labels, and I think maybe it's just, I don't know why, but that's when I got to that point to want to do really different things with data labels, I felt quite restricted. So I started to see where there could be a gap to like add some stuff. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what I'm trying to build, really interactively learning, and the same thing you're talking about, right? It's the way to engage people. They can actually try stuff out in the environment,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
yeah, have to participate in it, because you
yeah.
can sit there, you can watch a video for an hour, listen to this podcast episode. How much have you actually taken in or learned? Right?
Exactly.
It's not that this is for learning, so it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Completely fine, right? But if you actually need to learn something, then you're like,
Yeah.
well,
No,
yeah,
I fully agree, and I because I learn that way as well. I mean, some people are good at reading and learning. I need to do as well. When I make anything, I'm wrong to make the assumption, but when I make, for example, a YouTube video about Vega Lite, I do it on the assumption that the person who's watching the video is also kind of like doing it themselves at the same time,
mm,
because I think that probably drives how I talk about it and how I explain stuff, because I literally, every time I'm watching a YouTube video to learn something, it's because I have a problem I'm trying to fix, and I have that file open in front of me, and I need to actually type and do it at the same time. So I think, as you're saying, interactive learning for, I think, many people is the best way. So I think this is why I enjoyed the documentation so much, because I can just play around like a child basically and say, "Oh, it's cool, oh, it's awesome, love it."
make learning fun again.
Make exactly. Oh, very cool. Yeah, awesome. I know I love the fact that over your left shoulder you have the curtain open, so I can slowly see it getting darker and darker. When we started talking, it was quite light out, and now it looks like
Yeah,
it's evening.
yeah. It's summer. It's still summer here, but we haven't had much of a summer in the UK.
Nah, no.
It's been miserable.
Same in Berlin. It's been
Me,
like, yeah, we had like every year we put up like a small pool in the back garden for the kids to play in. But I think this year they've been in like 3 times because it just rained. Actually, we've had more rain and more thunderstorms, and we have them in Berlin in the summer anyway. But there's been some crazy ones this year, like really, really mad. So what are you gonna do? And
we need a Power BI report on it to show
I do
the weather
right, exactly.
patterns and global warming and all of that. What's the cause? What's driving all of this?
I'll create it. I'll publish it, and I'll tag you in it, mate. Don't you worry.
That
No,
would be
my family were away for 2 weeks in Italy. I never when they always go to Italy because my
oh
wife's
right.
Italian, but I don't go with them because I'm too English and it's too hot there for me in the summer. I just die. Um, so so
Map. Yeah.
right. See, we'll come. I love it when things goes loop back like that. Exactly, a map.
Everything comes
Um,
down to maps.
yeah, yeah. I'll use icon map. I can put little pictures of the clouds and stuff in, and then move it. I can do all this. I love it. Yeah. No, they were in Italy for 2 weeks, and I forgot to clean out the pool when they were away, and I was like, "Where are all these like mosquitoes coming from?" And a mosquito had like laid eggs or something inside the pool, and it was just like full of mosquitoes. Like, oh, Jesus Christ! And I was like, "I'm done. The pool's been empty now. Okay, I'm finished with this." Oh, anyway, mate.
We've gone over, haven't we? So
It's
yeah, we
it's
should
been
probably
really that went by really quickly, no?
yeah,
Damn.
absolutely, yeah. We should
Cool.
do it again.
Let's just keep going, mate. But thank you for rescheduling. By
No,
the way,
no.
I know you're
Yeah,
you're
no,
you're a
sorry.
busy
I know this
person.
was we postponed this like 3 times, and it was yeah, it was my fault. The last time I really wanted to attend Casper's session at the London
That's
Drug
fine.
User Group and stuff, and I was like, yeah, I really want to see this. So
That's very reasonable. That's I would never keep it from such stuff. But it's okay. I think the person who I've delayed the most, and I think every single occasion it was me, was actually Win. I think I wrote to Win, whatever it was, like in 2021, at the end of 2021. He didn't actually come on until like the end of 2022. It was literally a year of trying to find a date and canceling and stuff. It was just the way it goes. But it's always nice when the people appear here and we get to talk for a little while.
yeah,
So mate, thank you
thanks.
so much for your time.
Yeah, no,
And
it's great. Thanks for everyone for that, for all the engagement and the questions. I'm loving reading the comments. I'm gonna have to go back through this and look at it.
exactly. No, you're right. Thank you, everyone. The comments and the jokes and all that kind of stuff and the information is always much appreciated. So, I'm back next week, same time, of course. Rishi, again, it was awesome. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.